Welcome back to the Vorgroth. In today's video, we're going to be taking a little bit of a detour from our regular Age of Sigmar content and taking a look at the Forgeworld named characters. Oddly enough, these are all for Khorne, or the Blades of Khorne, and all of them are a bit odd just because of their nature as Forgeworld models. Now, I did look on the Forgeworld website, and it looked like the big Khorne dragon is no longer being sold. I don't know if that's being phased out or what, but I will still be covering it for this video because it is just kind of a ridiculous model that is fun to look at. So, without further ado, let's get started. So first up is Mazrahl the Butcher. He comes in at 365 points. He has a stat line of degrading movement starting at 12, 10 bravery, 12 wounds, a 3-up save, and 1 unbind. For our melee profiles, he has the Harrow Meat, 2-inch reach, 4 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, a degrading chart for rend, and then 3 damage. And then he has his Shield Blade, 1-inch reach, a degrading chart for attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 1 rend, 1 damage. And then he can use his Shield Blade for ranged attacks, I suppose. 12-inch reach, d6 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 1 rend, 1 damage. He has a command ability that was a little bit weirdly worded. It didn't state a range, so I just kind of read that as you can just pick a Khorne unit anywhere and give it +1 to wound, which is a pretty good ability. As for unique abilities, he only has 2. He does D3 mortal wounds on the charge on a 4-up, and if he kills anything with any of his attacks, he gets +1 attack for Harrow Meat. So a little bit of an interesting one that scales up his damage potential. So this one is very simple. He is an interesting Khorne monster with a good command ability and a neat scaling buff. If you were to kill something every battle round until battle round 5, you can get a max of 8 attacks at 3s, 3s, damage 3 on his axe. Out of the 3 characters here in this Forgeworld selection, I think this is probably the best one. He's cheap enough that his he's not a nuisance to take in. He's similar to a Bloodthirster, really. So if you think, would you rather have a Bloodthirster or this guy? I can see use cases for either, but definitely an interesting one. His scaling damage or scaling attacks is neat, but yeah, definitely an interesting one. Next up is Skarak the Bloodborne. This guy has a degrading move characteristic, 10 bravery, 16 wounds, and a 4-up save. He's got 2 melee profiles, the Brutal Blades, 2-inch reach, a degrading chart for attacks that starts at 8, 3 wounds, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, 2 rend, 1 damage. He has his Thunderous Hooves as well, 1-inch reach, 6 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 1 rend, 1 damage. And then he has a missile profile, which is neat, but it's not going to do anything really. 8-inch reach, 1 attack, 3s to hit, degrading chart for wounds, no rend, d6 damage. As for abilities, this guy has a few. He has, if he slays any model, he can heal D3. He gives a -2 to enemy casting rolls within 12 inches, -1 to enemy bravery within 12 inches. Before you remove this model from play when he is slain, he does a little bit of damage on his way out. You roll a dice for each enemy model within 3 inches, and on a 4-up, you roll that model's unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So good against hordes. He also gives +1 to charge for friendly Khorne units wholly within 12 inches. So this guy's a little bit of a weird one. He's kind of expensive. I don't really think he's worth his points. If he was a little bit cheaper, I think you could definitely consider taking this guy. His debuffs are fun. The -2 to enemy casting is really nice, especially in combination with some other Khorne buffs. And the +1 to charge is also good because you want to get your Khorne melee units into combat. I think really, though, he's too expensive. If he was maybe 400 points or about the same cost as the other the Butcher Forgeworld model, it would be a little bit easier to include this guy. The unique thing about this is I think that if you do include this model, you can functionally deny your enemy's casting, like all of it. Because if you combine him with a Bloodsecrator, a Skull Altar, and some Hexagore Skulls, you can, if you stack them all up properly, you can get a -5 to enemy casting and you reroll successful casts. If the Hexagore Skulls are also really close to the enemy wizard, you can do some damage to the wizard and also make them forget a spell potentially. So there's some use cases here, but I think he's just too expensive to have any real value. But a really cool model. I like his arm gauntlet blade thing. So yeah, too expensive for the points that what he does. Before we move on to the grand finale of the monstrous Corn Dragon, I'd like to give an extra special thanks to our Patreon supporters, especially Nick Hoff. You guys are awesome. Your support of my channel allows me to continue to try to upload regular videos, as well as grow the community in a way that I never could have imagined would be possible. So thank you very, very much. Speaking of the community, if you are interested in joining our Discord, there will be a link in the description below. It is a great time. I love seeing all the conversations going on down there, either related to Age of Sigmar or not. So I would be very grateful if you all decided to join. It's a wonderful time. So yeah. Last but definitely something is Vorgroth the Scarred on Skalak the Skullhorst of Corn, or just the giant corn dragon. He comes in at a whopping 1,250 points, and he has a stat line to accompany that. He has a degrading move chart of 14 inches, 10 bravery, 30 wounds, and a 3-up save. He has a lot of melee profiles, starting with the Skull Cleaver Axe of Corn, 1 inch reach, 12 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, 2 rend, 2 damage. The Eviscerating Claws, 3 inch reach, d6 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, degrading chart for rend, and 3 damage. Then the Cavernous Jaws, 3 inch reach, 2 attacks, 4s to hit, a degrading chart for wounds, 2 rend, and 3 damage. Next is the Brass Plated Tail, 3 inches reach, a degrading chart for attacks, 4s to hit, 4s to wound, 1 rend, 3 damage. And then he has a missile profile, 20 inch reach, 3 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 3 rend, d6 damage. For unique abilities, you get a +1 to wound for the Skull Cleaver that targets monsters. 6s to wound with the Skull Cleaver, deal d3 mortal wounds in addition to all the other damage. He does d3 mortal wounds on the charge on 2-up. He can innately deep strike. Once per battle, you can kind of shout at a corn unit and basically give it a slight immunity to battle shock, so it'll only lose 1 model instead of however many you would lose. And then here's a really wacky rule that I think is kind of so you can pick a friendly model within 3 inches and roll a dice. If the roll is equal to or greater than that unit's wound characteristic, you can eat that model and heal that many wounds. This is it's definitely an ability. I think it would make sense to eat enemy units, not necessarily friendly ones. But the fact that you can't eat enemy units, but you can eat your own friendly corn ones is kind of funny to me. If it gave you the option of doing one or the other, that would be useful. But getting rid of your models to heal this one is kind of odd. Lastly, he gives a massive -3 to enemy casting and unbinding within within 18 inches. The unbinding part is a little not that good because Corn innately doesn't have a lot of spell casting, but the casting debuff is good. So the Corn Dragon, he is a massively expensive unit, either in-game or with real money, costing around $610 US, which is about the cost of some full armies. For the same price in terms of points, you can bring 4 Bloodthirsters. Just something I thought I'd throw out there. But the big thing I can see with this guy is that he has no ward, meaning mortal wound spamming armies like Lumineth Realmlords, Cruel Boys, or the new Stormcast Dragons are gonna just eat this thing alive. He's big, he's easy to shoot at, he's doesn't have any innate wards, and it's just kind of like, yeah, you have 30 wounds, but in Age of Sigmar 3.0, mortal wounds are kind of where everything's at, and if you don't have a way to negate that or otherwise play around it, you're gonna have a hard time. Being over half your army in points at a 2,000 point game and not having a ward is really bad. It just makes this target even easier to get rid of. I can just see it now. If an opponent that I was playing against brought this Corn Dragon and I was playing my Daughters of Cain army and I had properly buffed up my big snake blob, this thing wouldn't stand a chance. It's just kind of, it's a little hard to swallow that one. Sure, this Corn Dragon is going to do a whole lot of damage, a monstrous amount of damage, and he's going to help with your large blobs of chaff from running away, but he's just so expensive. Getting to Deep Strike innately is nice. I would pretty much always Deep Strike him just so you're not going to get shot off the table turn one. And his ability to eat friendly models but not enemy ones is it's a really weird one. So he is definitely a case study in why Forgeworld rules are kind of bad and ridiculous for the most part, at least on the Age of Sigmar side of things. He's just kind of, he's something. I'll give him that. If you have a Corn Dragon or have seen one or played against one or otherwise just kind of like experienced what this thing is, what are your thoughts? Because I've never seen one in person, and I don't think that he'd be useful ever. But I'd be curious to know what some you guys' thoughts are. So leave those down in the comments below. And that was a look at the Forgeworld named characters of Khorne. These guys are a little bit out there in terms of their usefulness, and the fact that they are Forgeworld is already a detriment to their existence. But regardless, I think my top pick out of the three is definitely the Butcher. The first one I took a look at. He's probably the most usable of the three. But there is definitely something appealing about the massive Corn Dragon and just how absurd it is in terms of its rules, point costs, and all the above. But I don't really think it's very good. But if you have some ideas on how to make any of these things work, or if they work at all, please let me know down in the comments. Yeah. This has been the Vorgroth, and I'll talk to you guys next time.